Welcome to another episode of First Year Pros. I'm your host, Zach Tacy, and our guest today is Tyler Woodward, here to talk about his experiences in his first year as a pro athlete. He's got some great tips for you, some great stories, and with all that, let's go ahead, give him a warm welcome, and get started.
Cool. Well,
Sweet.
welcome, Tyler. Glad to have you on here. Let's kick this off with just a quick little background of who you are and how you got to where you're at.
I'm Tyler Woodward, professional triathlete. I'm in Chicago, Illinois. I just finished out my first year professional racing last year. A little bit of background about me. I grew up with endurance sports, and I also grew up playing hockey until middle of high school. High school turned more towards running, and that's when I just became a full-time runner, and a little bit in college. And then in college, I made that transition back to triathlon. A lot of different reasons, mostly wear and tear on my body and a lot of mental fatigue from just doing one sport every single day, 10 times, 12 times a week. So then when I got back into triathlon and in college, I jumped in very seriously, and I got into like the draft legal side of racing. And that's where I kind of like started to focus on my development, on trying to get to the next level. But that's a little bit about me. Went pro last year, earned it in 2021,
Okay.
and I waited a little bit to accept it.
Okay, that was going to be my next question because I know as I did a little bit of profile stalking, I saw that you had done Clash Miami last year, but I wasn't sure. It looked like that was still as an age group athlete for that one, and so I wasn't sure. Did you compete as a pro in that one?
I did not. So that was age
Okay.
group. I qualified the year before, and I qualified without doing any 70.3s. I did one 70.3 as an age group, and they canceled the swim at Steelhead. And then I did 70.3 World Championship, and that one was just a very hard and challenging race with the weather that came in.
Yeah,
so
2021 World Champs was
go ahead.
that was absolutely brutal.
That was
oof.
yeah.
Where were you?
So,
where were you on the course when the hailstorm came through?
I was on the bike, probably mile 30 on the bike, coming through town. So yeah, right before when I went through Snow Canyon, it was sunny and nice again, but I got hit on the bike course.
Yeah, I got hit there as well. I don't know if you remember, there was like that little 10-mile out and back. It would be like 5 miles out, 5 miles back, something like that. That's where it hit me, and I was like sideways, like trying to push like 300 watts and barely going like 12 miles an hour. That was absolutely absurd. Yeah, that course was some redemption this year. It was a lot better this year. A little chilly, but definitely better conditions. All right, keep going. So after the Worlds, that was your second 70.3.
Yeah, so throughout that year, I qualified and I got my pro card a couple different times, different ways. But I knew I didn't want to keep racing the draft legal way with it. So I needed to move up in distance I wanted to prove myself that I want to move up there. So I took that off season. You have a year to accept it off of your last qualification. So I kind of just, I used up a lot of that there to race Miami. Did well there. Third, kind of raced alone the whole time. So it was a good mental battle for myself on the bike, which is what I've been trying to improve on the most.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was my last age group kind of race. I knew that was going to be my last one.
Okay.
And then, I accepted my pro card. That was beginning of last year.
Okay.
So right after that race, probably a month later. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. That is a huge accomplishment. I'd love to dig into a little bit about, you said that you qualified for your pro card a few different ways and a few different times throughout the year. So would love to hear about some of those different ways that you qualified, as well as, how you decided to move from being draft legal up to wanting to do longer distance. And then I have a couple other questions, but we'll come back around to them. Around also just what draft legal racing is for anyone who's not aware the differences there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I qualified a few different times using the same way. So USAT has their own ranking and scoring system. So I qualified by basically getting a rank of like 106.5.
Mhm.
Every year it changes a little bit.
Yeah.
3 times in a year or 2 times. In 2020, I put together 5 or 6 races over that score threshold. And then with their kind of timing qualification, I had off of that last date, so that fifth or sixth time I qualified, I had a year to accept it.
Okay.
So I think the last time I qualified was Age Group Nationals 2021. So I had until August of 2022 to actually accept it.
Okay.
So that's how I qualified, and that had been a goal for the past 3 years I've been trying to qualify. 2020 I hit one race, couldn't hit a second race of it, and then unfortunately it just wipes clean every year.
Yeah.
So that was how I qualified. Yeah.
Okay. So you did the points, and a few of the other pros I've talked to so far have also done something similar where they qualified through the points. Did you specifically want to do that? Like, was that your goal, is to qualify through getting points, or were you just looking at what was going to be the best option for you? Because there are multiple different ways to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. That's why I was kind of in the draft legal way too. Same thing like at Age Group Nationals when I qualified with a good ranking. You can qualify there off of placement too.
Okay.
I've always been an athlete that has been very consistent, but then the other side of that is I've never had like a breakthrough performance of like jumping up 2 levels or something.
Right.
So I knew that wasn't really possible at Age Group Nationals to try to drop 5 seconds in my or 5 minutes in my Olympic time.
Okay.
But PRing by 20 seconds, 1 minute was very doable. And that was just knowing myself and knowing my kind of how I race. And I'm just a very consistent athlete from race to race.
Hey,
But
that's
I'm
good
not
to
going to
be.
be able. Yeah. But I couldn't walk in with like a 158 Olympic time and expect to try to race and try to be top 3 overall there and be low 150s, middle like 155. I wasn't going to drop that. So
Yeah.
the other kind of ways, I was doing some draft legal racing and hoping that I was doing some EDR, some elite development racing the past 3 years. What
is that exactly? That's actually a new term.
So it's elite development racing. I think they just changed it to now it's like national development racing, but it's like U25 or U28 draft legal sprint racing.
Okay.
So that's where just a lot of competition is. So I've been doing that the past 4 years. Very different style of racing, but I do that early in the year and go down to Florida in March. And then the rest of my season would be non-draft focus.
Okay, cool. Just a quick touch on that. Which one do you prefer between draft and non-draft? What are the pros and cons of each one in your opinion?
So personally, as an athlete, I probably prefer, and that's why I've gone towards long course racing, is a non-draft style of racing. I spent 4 years specifically racing for draft legal, and now I coach a juniors elite team for draft legal. So I know the system very well, but it's kind of like knowing your own limitations and what really brings out the star athletes there in a field of 75. What are the characteristics and the racing styles that the top 5 have? And after a few years of very hard pushing myself, like especially in the pool, I found those kind of limiters, and I'm like, you know what, let's try to move on to the next distance then.
Yeah.
But off of excitement and just like how much fun a race can be to spectate, draft legal racing is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's a little bit more adrenaline, a little bit more energy, and I mean they are generally shorter as well, so they're easier to watch. But yeah, there definitely seems to be like, I don't know if I'd want to do draft legal. I've been pretty strict in the 70.3 since I really got into it.
It's fun to mix into it. They also have age group styles of draft legal now too, because that's how like the Olympics is set up. So USA Triathlon's trying to make that pipeline and make it all uniform.
Okay.
It's just very engaging, both on the athlete and the spectator side. They always have multiple loop bike courses, multiple loop runs. So as a spectator, it's not going and seeing a 70.3 and standing on the side of the road at mile 14 for 2 hours. You're at one spot and you're seeing the whole bike race for 30 minutes.
Right.
It's very engaging. It's a lot of fun.
And that's one thing that I think Clash is doing pretty well now. So they have Clash Miami and Clash Daytona. At least those are the two I'm most familiar with, and they have it like on the racetracks. So that makes it a lot more spectator friendly. I think they're on to a good path there on that. So hopefully with this sport we can make it more spectator friendly.
I've spectated like Daytona, and obviously I've competed at Clash a couple of times. They do a good job, like a good mixing pot of athletes too. How they have the short course guys and the long course guys, because it's all the same sport at the end of the day, and it's kind of good to see these athletes together on the same line, doing a race that's in between distances. That I think they've picked a good format too. That's made it pretty fair for the ITU guys, the WTS guys, and of course, kind of pros. But yeah, they do a good job.
Cool. Yeah, I look forward to actually competing in one of those races in the near future.
Do you have one in mind?
I mean, I was looking at both Daytona. I was going to do Daytona last year, but wasn't able to get it into the schedule. And then I was looking at Miami, but I don't remember the dates for it, and I think I might be busy during that time as well. So, yeah, I just got to take a look, and I've been all over the place. So I'm still actually just got another race onto my schedule, and I'm pretty much just playing it by ear to figure out like which one's going to be next.
Yeah.
What races do you have coming up next, actually?
The only thing that I have on the schedule is probably going to start with 70.3 Boulder.
Boulder, okay.
So that'll start my year. I've always kind of raced early in Florida, whether that be in Claremont, which is like draft legal racing in early March, or Miami last year. So it's the first year I'm not racing in March. But yeah, Boulder is going to be the first one of this year.
Okay, cool. So now we're kind of like bouncing around, but I'd actually love to use that as a transition to talk about like how you set up your race career, and how you did it as an age group athlete versus how you do it now as a pro. We can talk about your first year.
Hold on, you're cutting out.
Oh gosh, I've been having internet issues.
You're cutting out a little bit.
Okay. Am I all right now?
It's still pretty bad.
Crap. I've been having internet issues all day. Here
we go. I can hear you just fine.
Okay. Yeah, well, as I'm recording this, I would love to, there'll be a little bit of issues once I'll try to edit out any of those awkward pauses. So once I get it out there on YouTube. But I'm not sure how much of that you heard. So again, would love to know the differences between how you plan your races when you were an age group athlete, how you did it in your first year, and then how you're doing it this upcoming year, and just, whether you have a strategy for planning races or if it's like just whatever fits.
Yeah. So for age group racing, it always kind of turned into like what were those big A race countries or races in the country? So age group nationals was always like the A race. That's what I peaked for, and that was the end of it. And then I picked some like local stuff as like C races to just kind of tune up. And then I'm in Chicago, so we have the Chicago Triathlon, which is a very competitive big race. And I would that's at the end of the year, and that would always be like a kind of like peak for that, try to like have a good hometown race. But as an age grouper, it always led up to age group nationals, trying to race and get higher up on that podium, and just try to race towards the front of the field. And that's what everything led towards. So as a first year pro last year, very different, because then you can't race age group nationals. So like, okay, what do I want to do? I was having after Miami, got like bike fits, added on nutrition coaching and a strength coach program. And I actually got injured a little bit after that. So that threw off my my mid-season racing. So
Okay.
I didn't end up racing until the end of the year. And it was more of what races can I get in my first year before the first year is over. So I raced at the very end of the year, almost back to back, 3 weeks apart, or 2 weeks apart. I did Augusta as my first race. And
Yeah,
then
I was
I
there
went
for
to
that
Waco.
one.
Yeah. And then I went to Waco 3 weeks after that. Wasn't in the best shape, or I was in decent shape. I didn't have the best strength behind me, especially on the bike. I was lacking on the bike from calf issues. So that turned into, okay, what can I get out of this year still? Because I hadn't raced since Miami.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I had a great
that's a
start of the
big
year.
gap.
So those are at the end of the year too. So those are September and October races. So I got in those two, and then called it quits after that.
Yeah.
Needed to rest up and restart.
And then for this upcoming season, do you have any particular strategies or plans or races that you like really want to do?
For this year coming up?
Yep.
Yeah. So for this year, I eyed Boulder, 1 for the competition and 2 for the course.
Okay.
I'm a light, like I wanted a course with elevation this time. Both Augusta and Waco were pretty flat courses.
Yeah.
I didn't think that suited me very well, especially moving up in level. So I wanted to do Boulder, but after Boulder, the rest of the year, it's kind of open. It kind of just determines how well Boulder goes, and if I can perform well at 1, altitude, and 2, on like a hilly course there, a challenging course. But aspirations wise, I mean, just like everybody else, one race goes well, that goal line, it'll toe up a little bit more and a little bit more, show up at a bigger race, a little bit more competitive race. But for now, it's going to be the kind of US based races. Augusta, I'd love to go back to. Waco, I'd love to go back to. Boulder works well with my work schedule, that I am free that weekend. Go ahead.
Augusta sketches me out now because, I mean, luckily nothing happened with the pros or like a lot of the top age group athletes, but the train that came through, like that just sketches me out. Like,
I saw that.
I do not want that to happen to me in a race.
Yeah.
So like maybe I'll go to Augusta if I can get one of my sponsors or partners to cover it. But otherwise, I think that's going to be a little bit lower on my choice list for races. Until they can at least somewhat guarantee there's not going to be a train that comes through the middle of the freaking run course.
I saw that. I saw that night, just like scrolling through, and I'm like, no, like, because when I was racing, that wasn't going on, but I couldn't believe that happened. Then that's really unfortunate for those athletes too.
Yeah, one of my athletes actually got stuck behind it, and that was his first 70.3, and the train is the only thing that prevented him from going sub 5 in his first one. And so I think the adjusted time was sub 5, but still it was like, oh, man, luckily he did the North Carolina 70.3 like it was like a few weeks or a month later, and he went sub 5 under that one. So like we got him there. But still just
good.
Yeah, the train coming through, I was like, oh man, it's so bad.
That's unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, gosh. Luckily it didn't happen to any of the pros.
Yeah.
Cool. Back to backstep again just a little bit for your first race. Talking about Augusta, what was it like? You said Augusta 70.3 was your first pro race, right?
Yes.
So what was it like, prepping for your first pro race, and kind of like getting into like the mindset of racing with the pros, and just how that race, like how it was different than racing as an age group for you?
Yeah, so prepping for it, I kind of knew what I was getting into. I knew what the guys are capable of, a whole new level. But being aware of it is very different than like being in the moment and actually taking part in it. And
Yeah.
that was mentally the biggest challenge that I was kind of facing, was going from age group of like, okay, you get to dictate the pace at the front of the race, and now you get to play the strategy game. There's a lot of different ways the race can go. You know your strengths. You should know some of your competitors' strengths. You know the course, and it's a game, and that's what I kind of loved about triathlon for so long.
Yeah.
So racing at the front of the race, you get to make a lot of those calls. I knew walking into Augusta, I don't get to call any shots anymore in
You're
any of
not
the three
you're not the
sports.
big dog anymore.
Exactly. Not that I was a big dog in age group, but like just depending on the race, it's like I have a strong run, I have a strong swim. So I kind of knew how to use that depending on who was there. So that was different going into it. It was not as aggressive of a mindset as usual.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
very nervous for the race too.
Hmm.
Just it's your first time. I had a
Right.
lot of buddies there that would that I talked to, but it's a lot of. I've done the sport for a long time, so going to a pre-race meeting like that is cool, but it's also a little bit nervous. You realize it's your first one. You realize you don't exactly know how it's going to go. What's the
Yeah.
protocol here? But getting the first one done was fun. So at the end of the day, I was happy I did it. Well, a lot to take away from it. For me personally, the race did not go well
Okay.
at all. It almost went as bad as it could have gone, for as big as a fear that I was having for how I
Yeah.
could perform on the bike. It basically happened that I just wasn't able to perform that day. But I went in there with the mindset of, hey, this is your first one. Let's try to get the most out of this one and just soak it in.
Yep.
So that was Augusta. Yeah.
Well, it's over. It's done with. You got the
All
experience.
good.
You can go into the next one, less nerves. You know the field, and I'm sure the next few will be much better. So sorry that
Yeah.
the first pro race didn't go quite how you wanted it, but I mean, it sounds like you went in pretty open minded. So when at least you had that mindset for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was still happy with how I performed, and I still stuck it out there. I still finished. But I already signed up for Waco 3 weeks later. So that was during the race. I was already like I had that fire going. I wasn't able to produce any more like power on the bike to make up for anything, but it was okay. 3 weeks, you get a second chance. So
Yeah, you got that a little bit. Also, I don't know, having racing at that level and having races that close together can be, I mean, I don't know about you, but I know that for me personally, like after 70.3, I'm usually fairly fresh, like within a couple days. Because I was doing some like full training for a while. And then I backed down to the 70.3 this past year because I couldn't stay injury free doing full training. But like even if your recovery is pretty good after those races, having them that close together can still be a lot. Just planning and you got to cool down from one race and then keep it easy leading into the next race. So it's like just sort of a maintenance zone in there.
Yeah, exactly. And then just with a little bit of a story between the two races, obviously wasn't happy with how Augusta went. So I've worked with the same coach for 5 years. She's gotten me from a decent age group athlete to where I was today. So after the race, we had a conversation on how hard do we want to keep doing this for? We basically, after the hour conversation, it was a very challenging. I had a couple of days off after the race. Like you said, you take a few days off, but I had a very challenging 10 to 12 day cycling block, and then 5 days, and then 5 days off, and then a 3-day taper into the race. But so that was kind of how that race in between went, because it was abnormal for me to kind of hit intensity 3 days after a 70.3, especially. But it was kind of put your eggs in this basket. Let's try to fix as much as we can before the next race in 3.5 weeks. So we were able to do that, but it was different. It was very different.
And then how did Waco go after that?
Waco went a lot better.
Okay, that was good. There we go.
Yeah, still I swam a little bit worse than what I was expecting. I consider myself a pretty good swimmer, but swam a little bit worse, but produced over, I think I averaged 32 more watts over a over 56 miles. So
it's a pretty significant
10%, almost 10% higher.
Yeah, that's
so
a pretty significant
I was able
difference.
and the conditions we had were crazy there. Just hail and wind and rain and guys coming swerving off the road and crashing.
Oh god.
So I was very happy with how I kind of turned stuff around in a short time frame. Because that's all I kind of wanted to prove was like, hey, I can at least keep up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Waco ended and that was the end of my year.
Okay. Well, you got 2 races in, one not so good, one a little bit better, is what it is. This year we'll get to take a few more steps, climb the ranks a little bit more. We'll definitely be making sure.
Exactly.
Say what?
I said exactly. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Sorry, I thought I was glitching out again. I was like, crap, I gotta figure that out. I don't know what's going on with it. So to dive in a little bit about your training schedule, and did you make any like significant differences in training from when you were doing age group stuff to training as a pro now?
Yeah. So and that kind of changed leading up to Miami. I basically kept that age group like status and started to train for the next level to kind of produce a result that I was a little bit happy with. But one, the overall time. So I was as an age grouper in 2020, 2021, I was about 14 hours a week. So not a ton, like as an age grouper, that was a solid amount. Not a ton of biking. And that was probably the biggest thing, but I also wasn't racing 70.3s yet.
Right.
So that was the biggest change was now I'm training 16, 18 on the low end up to about 25, 26 on the high end. A lot more biking. I'm riding almost every day now. It's the bike is just so important in a 70.3 and at this level. So that was probably the biggest change that I faced. It's just the bike fitness, the bike depth of these fields. Everyone's super strong.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to look at some of the like data and the analytics coming off of the pro athletes and just like the power numbers they're holding for the race. It can be a little mind-boggling sometimes, and comparing myself, like I'm working towards getting my pro card as well. This winter might not show it though, because my bike definitely fell off the last few weeks. But like just comparing like the power numbers that I hold sometimes versus like some of the pros, it's like, oh my gosh, just how do you get up to that level? Which is the next question. How do you build up to that level without burning out?
Yeah.
As an age going up,
I think that's a really good point. And that's the line that you just keep towing, that you don't want to cross over though. Because athlete burnout's huge. It's big in this sport too. Burnout can just be mental fatigue or it can be overuse injuries, but you want to get the most out of your training too. So you have to smartly get to that line without crossing it too many times for too long.
Yeah. Do you have what recommendations, what tips would you have for athletes that are okay, it's just gave me a quick we got about 10 minutes and I'll have to reset this again. So like what tips, what advice would you have for upcoming athletes or athletes who are really trying to get faster, improve their times, that either maybe have a limited schedule or like what would be your go-to advice for those athletes? I guess there's 2 different questions in there. Those with a limited schedule and then those that are trying to add more hours.
Yeah.
Those are they're opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. So are you asking to make that jump to the next level? To do it in those 2 different situations?
Yeah. I mean, whether I guess it would be
biggest thing that I would recommend.
Oh, I got the lag going back and forth again.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me all right now?
Uh-oh. There we
Can
go.
you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Cool.
All
Yeah,
good.
the two different levels would be sort of the time crunched athlete that maybe only has 10 hours a week versus the athletes who are trying to take it to the next level and want to get up to the 15 to 18 plus hours a week, and how they can sort of structure their training without
Yeah.
overtraining or burning out.
Yeah. So great question. With that limit for both situations, any athlete that's trying to get towards that line, you really need a support system around you too. So getting a coach, training groups, master swimming, as many resources as you can have, and then training groups and training buddies are also just a huge mental and beneficial training tool. Limited time and like you said, the normal kind of like 14 plus, you can do it both ways. You just have to do it smart if you only have 10 hours a week. So there's different ways of training. You have your normal periodization training. You also have a polarized system, so very high intensity, with very low zone 2 or zone 3 work, and then a lot of zone 1 work. So that would probably work well with the limited timed athlete. It's not as traditional as the normal polarized or periodized training, but if you only have 10 hours a week to work, to put in some work, it's got to be quality. You got to be there the whole time too.
Yep.
And then as the normal athlete or the athlete that can give 10 to 14 hours a week, just same kind of thing. Make sure you're doing it in the right way and make sure you're being smart with it. You can get injured still training 8 hours a week if you're just not doing it the right way. So making sure that you have a system around you, whether it's a local triathlon club, a local coach, your own, like hiring your own coach, just to get the most out of that amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that I've tried to, reiterate with some of my athletes as well, is that, again, it can be difficult if you only have 10 hours and you're trying to train 3 different sports. You got to be careful about, you do have to prioritize quality in that case, but you can't go balls to the wall for every single workout. Otherwise you will likely end up injured. And then usually,
exactly. Yeah.
Again, with adding in those 18-hour, plus when you start getting in those longer distances, making sure to have like the Z2, that Z2 in there, getting the long aerobic stuff, and as well as the harder workouts.
Yeah.
So we're gonna backtrack a little bit more back into your background again, because we skipped over it a little bit, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you made that transition into triathlon as well, because you said you started out with hockey.
Yep. So I grew up with, my dad and he's still he's a triathlon coach right now in college. So he coaches at TCU. So but back then he was doing Ironman races, he was doing half races, he was rock climbing. So I got very involved into endurance kind of sports young, as well as playing hockey. So I was doing your local 5K. When I was little, I was a 12-year-old and I ran my first half marathon. Not recommending it to anybody, very bad decision. But that's kind of just like what I grew up with. That was the kind of household it was. Just like that endurance junkie kind of early 2000s kind of thing. So played hockey in high school, and I ran in high school, and both were going well, but I had to choose one or the other. Was I going to try to stay like a runner's body, get fast? It's a pretty good miler. Nothing super fast to run like Division I anywhere big, and I knew that. Or was I going to try to put on weight and play hockey? And I chose running, and I ran 1 year in college, and I transferred. Just didn't fit in with the program, got mentally burnt out with it, with the one sport kind of athlete thing.
Yep.
And took a year off of everything. And that's when I kind of like reevaluated what I wanted to do. Also realized I needed an outlet to put all of my energy into, and something to kind of better myself in every single day.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I want to do these workouts. I want to feel good. I want to get the rush. So then I put all of that, the years of like running and playing hockey, and like the structure, and I moved it over to triathlon. My dad helped me with the first couple of years of it. But then I went in very, very quickly into it. Coming from a running background, I could run at the level, and I did the college triathlon scene. So for the men's, it's a club sport.
Yep.
So I travel around the Midwest in the fall. I went to Eastern Illinois, had a couple teammates there, and always had a college club nationals, and that was kind of like the big A race, lots of competition. Made a lot of great friends in that scene. But that's when I kind of like started to develop and started to push myself and see what the next level kind of is, and started going to age group nationals and then seeing those guys at the podium. And I would go to the awards, and I wasn't a part of the awards at all, but I would just want to see the podium, and I want to see the top guys overall. I want to see the guys who won in my age group. And I still have the pictures of it, and that's kind of what motivated me the most, was like, hey, one day I want to get on that podium. One day I want to get on that podium overall. But that's kind of my what I like, how I would kind of sum up how I got into it.
Yeah, I think that I've definitely started picking up on some tendencies. A lot of the pros that I've talked with so far are very similar, where they're like, yep, I grew up in a family that was endurance or adrenaline junkies. They like, I grew up surrounded by this. And yeah, just I guess we get that mindset, and whether it's nature or nurture, something pushes us or unscrews those bolts in our heads that makes us want to do this.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the other part is just, a big driver for me was definitely the single sport mindset, of like, just getting burnt out from doing one thing over and over again. Like, it can be nice, but if you're competitive and you have a lot of energy, you got to put it somewhere, like you said. And 3 sports, it's a great way to get rid of that energy.
Yeah. So like that first week when I was like, okay, I'm going to stop running competitively, it was like, okay, great. So tomorrow I get to pick what of these 3 or 4, if I wanted to like do strength or something, I feel like doing tomorrow. And I trained for like my first year just like that. And I woke up and I was like, I feel like getting on my bike today. I feel like swimming today.
Yeah.
But yeah, that single sport mentality, and just the cutthroatness of those sports too, took a toll.
Yeah, because if you're gonna do one sport, you do have to be really freaking good at that one sport to really excel at it. And that was, again, I think that was a big driver for me too, is like in triathlon, like I knew like I'm a good runner. I'm probably never going to be the best runner. I'm a good cyclist. I'm a good swimmer. Probably not going to be the best in either of those. But you put the 3 together, I might have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at right now too.
Yeah.
Not the best swimmer, definitely not the best cyclist out there, not the best runner. But in this sport, when you're balancing those 3, that balancing act, and now you're adding in nutrition and strength, and that's why I kind of love triathlon. It's 3 sports, but there's so many other moving gears involved, that make it a race that's more than just fastest swimmer, fastest runner, fastest cyclist.
Yeah, at some point
I do. I have these every week too. I work with a nutritionist, and it's the same kind of thing. He has the free one. So if we go to 40 minutes, it's like, or we just wrap it up in 40 minutes. It's like, hey, let's be quick.
Yeah,
it works. No big deal.
Initially, when I thought about kicking off this series, I was thinking that these were all going to be like 30-minute interviews, and then most of them have gone over, because as we start talking, I mean, y'all just have such great stories to share, that like it ends up going longer, and I love it because I love hearing your stories. The whole purpose of this series is to share, your experiences and how you made it to going pro, and to highlight that experience and that accomplishment. So I mean, again, just mid interview, congratulations on the going pro. It really is a big deal and a big accomplishment.
It's cool that you're doing this too. So it's nice to highlight and kind of get out there for all the athletes I was that athlete at age group nationals, like I was telling you about, that there's a ladder to it, and it's good to kind of highlight and let that next generation kind of see how they can do it and just see
Yeah.
how it was done before. So it's
Yeah.
awesome that you're recording this, putting it on a platform for people to see.
Yeah. And I think the one thing that I've actually learned and that's been really interesting for me is that just the diversity in the, in the pros that I've talked with so far. I mean, training experience, backgrounds, there's definitely some commonalities between everyone because, it takes a certain type of mentality to, to go pro and to be able to dedicate that type of time and energy. But I mean, there's been different strategies, people from different backgrounds. I mean, I've talked with one person who like just went, he was just like, all right, I'm doing pro. I've talked to people that started age groups and now have like, have worked their way up with that dream. Like it's really cool to see the different backgrounds. And to hopefully highlight to anyone who's seeing this, like, yeah, like if you have the grit, if you have the drive and the motivation, like it's something that you can make happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I want to talk a little bit more about training. I think we talked a little bit about like the hours that you put in. But like, what are your focuses for this upcoming season? I think you mentioned something about working a little bit more on swim, bike. Earlier you mentioned that you started working with a nutritionist, and so some of this would be, I'm interested to hear kind of like the plan that you have ahead. As well as giving some advice to other athletes too about, some of the importance of, strength training and nutrition as a part of like your program that you're doing.
Yeah. So I'll start out with the strength stuff. So strength's something that I've really never hit in my athletic career, even running. Never really touched strength, especially lower body stuff. Never did. I've always been pretty fragile lower body, very tight hamstrings, very tight ankles. But as we're trying to balance two other sports, I needed to like strength training is very important, lower body. Being able to lift weight, lower body in a safe practice is something that I've started last year. Which kind of led to some issues that we've resolved, and why I needed an off season to like actually do it at a pace that I could, because I needed to progress very quickly to be able to race. But strength training, I think in triathlon is huge, especially for bike performance, for bike power output. Something that I picked up on a lot last year and I've continued to work with this year. With the nutrition comment you made, I started working with a nutritionist before Miami, so it's kind of like that off season of 21 to 22. Miami was my first time racing with like him, like watching me, or not watching me, but like tracking everything and prepping me for a race. That race went as well as it did because of how he was able to prep me for leading up to it, but then also like the 2 weeks before, the 1 week before, the 3 days before. Made a lot of changes in each of those timeframes that I wasn't aware of. So it was nice to have that accountability of somebody like you're tracking your food too, making sure I hit my protein. I'm also a vegan athlete, so that's one thing too. Just having a nutritionist who's worked with professional like vegan athletes and cyclists before was very reassuring that like, okay, he knows what he's talking about. He's not going to pressure me into something that I'm not comfortable with too. So he was very understanding with that too. I didn't want to make any lifestyle changes based off of a professional's opinion on what I need to do. I wanted that professional to be able to help me with the way that I live.
Yeah.
So
that makes
we became a very good pair, still working with him.
Awesome. Yeah. So to dig in that too, sorry, that just popped up. So you mentioned that you were working with him and, paying attention to your food like 3 weeks, 2 weeks out. Was that your total diet or mostly like your race nutrition?
So that was like race and total, it was total diet changed going into a race.
Okay.
basically changes between like 3 different phases, depending on if I'm in a building phase, maintaining, or am I in a race phase. And then it's just and I do track, and we track everything that I'm eating, all the supplements I'm taking, just to make sure that I'm hitting, especially being a vegan athlete, making sure that I'm hitting those essentials every day still. And that was a game changer when we started working together from 21 to 22, was being able to maintain healthy, like, vitamin levels, nutrient levels. And then obviously, like, just his experience and expertise on getting race ready, which was a little bit different than how you're kind of taught a little bit, like the carb loading ideas. So it's still like the general framework of carb loading, but the timings of it are a little bit different. And then sweat testing and all that good stuff, and finding the right nutrition for my needs on the race course. So we changed everything going into Miami. So there was a lot of new stuff going on there.
Yeah. So I want to just touch on a couple points there. One, as far as nutrition, and this is just advice for anyone watching this. I don't know about you, but I know I definitely had a tendency, like some issues around nutrition, and always being concerned about like having a race weight. And, you know, when you're doing this much activity, you're eating a lot more. And I know that can sometimes be some mental difficulties around that. And I just want to put a message out to everybody. Like, when you're training this much, it's almost hard to overeat. I know I had an issue. I was under eating all the time. Like, I was always under eating because I'd eat like a full box of pasta for dinner with like 2 things of chicken. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just ate so much food and I'm still hungry. But like, your body needs that to rebuild itself after the type of work you put in. So like, you don't want to be, just constantly eating junk and stuff. But like, you need to refuel your body. And if you undereat, you're more likely to be running into issues with injuries, as well as just having a lack of energy. I don't know if this is the case, but I think that's even exaggerated a little bit more, at least on the energy level with vegan athletes, from what I've heard. So if you have any specific tips for vegan athletes, that's something that's definitely out of my wheelhouse, but I would love if you could share some like tips and tricks for athletes of, types of food to eat, or just a good way of staying healthy and training at this level.
Yeah. So to reiterate your point that we do burn a lot of calories. We do eat a lot too. So we should never feel like you're trying to like restrict your eating. So like I said, I've worked with the nutritionist. I don't weigh myself though. That's not what we're like. Our end goal isn't trying to get to a race weight. So it's always just to hit a calorie target, but based off of performance. If I'm not able to perform, then we need to change things. For vegan specific athletes, the biggest things that I've picked up on are hitting protein goals, which is a little bit more challenging if you don't have the knowledge on where the protein is naturally. And that's one lesson that I learned myself, was like, okay, if I can't have a chicken breast, right, I'm going to go to the frozen section of Meijer and pick up the vegan chicken breast. That stuff's not good either. It's very processed. It's just like chicken nuggets then. So that was a learning curve that I had to make too, was to eat more naturally, which I think would be better anyways. Just more naturally, just more natural food, stay away from processed stuff. And I think that's across all diets.
I would 100% support that.
Same thing with the vegan athletes. I think that vegan athletes kind of just, if you don't have the knowledge, you're like, okay, I'm going to fall back to the vegan chicken nuggets at the grocery store, just as bad as the chicken nuggets at McDonald's. So,
well, and on that note, what type of proteins would you recommend? Like, whether it's what you eat, or just like what would you recommend for vegan athletes that, maybe don't have that knowledge of, what a good go-to is?
Yeah.
Do you have anything, either a specific type of meal or anything like that you would specifically recommend?
I do a lot of tofu just in general.
Okay.
So a lot of tofu, like lentils,
Love
beans,
lentils.
obviously, and then like almonds and some nuts. Besides that, I rely on protein shakes too. So it
Okay.
also just works into the training schedule and work schedule that you finish the session and you can have a protein shake that has
Yep.
25 to 40 grams of protein. And that gets me to almost a third of my needs for the day. So that's kind of my go-to, those three.
Okay.
Because yeah, you don't have the animal-based protein options out there. That's just very easy to get from the grocery store. That's why you have to kind of look into and just get that knowledge and then find out your own personal takes on what
Yep.
do you like to eat? What do you like to make? And then go from there too.
Yep.
If you don't
And
like what you're eating, you're not going to eat or you're not going to
Yep.
keep going.
And I just want to like reiterate that point that you just made. Eat what you enjoy. Don't feel like you need to, completely change your diet in order to like meet specific requirements here and there. Like eat what you want. If you want to have pizza, you can make pizza in a very healthy manner. Like,
Oh yeah.
pizza itself, actually, like a homemade pizza with the right ingredients, honestly, pretty healthy.
Yeah.
And yeah, every now and then it's nice to dig down on a super greasy pizza. Like, I love pizza.
Yeah.
That's my go-to. Like, and again, it's just, you can have ice cream, you can have treats, but it's all in moderation. If you're eating ice cream every night, if you're having sweets and treats all day long, that's going to mess with your sugar. Like, it's going to mess with your energy. So all in moderation, but finding that balance of like what gives you energy, but then also, what is sustainable and what do you enjoy eating?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks about that. And yeah, on the note of the protein shakes, I personally work with Momentous, and I've tried Owen. Those are two of my favorites that
Yeah.
I use for protein powders. So I'm gonna link those below as well. I think that there might be some discounts associated with those, but I'm gonna try to link those below. Do you have anything particular that you use that you prefer?
I go between the Vega stuff, so Vega, and then
I've used them as well. They're pretty good.
yeah, BPN does a protein that I got one of, and I just tried it. It was okay. Right now I just got in a huge naked one, so it's like a pea protein.
Yeah.
But it's like a 5-gallon like huge container, so that'll last me for a little bit too.
That's the Naked brand.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like their shakes just have a lot. I mean, for me personally, have a lot more sugar than I like in them. Owen, OWYN, only what you need. That's definitely like in the top of my list for a combination of like protein and decent flavor as well. And I've recently started using Momentous as well, which I think is a lot more like supplement and nutrient focused. A little bit less on the flavor side, but it's still like a really good one. So I'll have some links below for anyone that is vegan athlete or just athlete in general that wants to try them out. Yeah, so moving on from the did you have any other tips or anything along the nutrition side that you wanted to talk about?
Nope, that was it.
Cool. Well, then on to like the other training. Like you said, you said you had a couple areas that you really wanted to focus on this year.
Yeah, so like the big one, which was last year too, it's just bike training. Bike training. It's kind of simple. It's kind of intuitive that you ride more, you get stronger. You do have to ride the smart ways. You need to ride with a purpose sometimes. But it is a little bit different than the other sports, that it is a low impact sport if you're just riding easy. So you can get a lot of fitness out of it still, and you can put on a lot of miles. So that's one thing that I'm working on this year, is just riding a lot more. So I've been riding almost every day I'm probably riding 5+ days a week now. Nothing long, because I'm not racing anytime soon still. So Boulder is still months away.
Yeah.
So normally about 50 minutes to 2 hours every time. So nothing crazy yet, but that's the big one. It's just riding.
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's where I've been stuck inside. I don't know. how it's been for you. I assume you said Chicago, right?
Chicago, yes.
Yeah, pretty freaking cold up there.
Yeah.
I know I've been doing a lot more indoor riding. I mean, I have a hard time going past like 2 hours on the trainer. Like it's such a mental grind. How do you do it? How do you get past 2 hours on it?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. So like I do have a second bedroom at my place that's just a pain cave. So I have like the LED lights, the flags, fans. So I built it for that purpose to help with long rides.
Yeah.
When I talk to athletes, I kind of preach like create your workout environment. That's really going to turn into the workout, like the work you're going to put in. If you're not in a good environment, nice. You're not gonna be able to perform. You're gonna get tired of it. If you're riding next to your couch, which I did for a year in my living room, it just wasn't I couldn't get in the right headspace. So
my office is a guest bedroom, my office space, my workout space. My bike actually isn't back here because I finally got to ride outside yesterday. Hallelujah. And then it's off to also my like crafting area. Like my office is definitely multi-purpose. I would love to have just a solo pain cave workout room.
Yeah,
great.
But like in your situation, it's what you actually have though. So there was one thing that when I was moving that I just wanted a second bedroom just for that purpose. So I could lay out workout mats too. So I keep the workout mats permanent, the puzzle ones that stick together. So I have somewhere to do strength and core off of the bike. Just make it as easy as possible and create a good environment that I can go in there with some music on, turn on the lights, and I can actually like get in a good mindset.
Yeah, I think having the designated space is really important. Just for like the mentality reason, like if it's a space that you can kind of walk into, I mean, similar to a gym, like when you go into the gym, you're thinking about your workouts, you're thinking about what you're going, or if you had a bad day or something, maybe you're getting some of that out. But like same thing with like a home space, you just set it up so that you go into that space and you can do your work and you can like put your work in there. Yeah. I can kind of see your spot in the background there. But yeah, that's awesome that you've got that set up. Cool. Well, as we're starting to wrap up here, I wanted to first ask if you had anything else from your first year as a pro that you would particularly like to share, whether it was experiences, advice, tips, anything like that. Anything else from your first year that you'd really like to share with people?
The advice for anybody looking to do it would be to bet on yourself. There's a lot of people out in the pro field, there's a lot of stuff on social media, and there's a lot of similar faces. It's a great scene. I love the scene too. But if you have goals, bet on yourself and believe in yourself to get there. That would probably be the first one. But then also, as you're doing that, have an open mind with it too, because there's a learning curve to everything in life. And doing something like this, it's not easy. No one said it was easy. That's why that's why everybody doesn't do it. But I had a buddy that sent me a really nice text before my first race, along the lines of like, "Hey, you've worked really hard to get here. A lot of people would love the experience that you have tomorrow." And hearing those words from a good friend kind of like settled me down before a race. And it's like, hey, the work's been done. You've gotten here. Soak it in and enjoy. So that would be I wanted to reiterate that advice to anybody with these aspirations of it is very hard work for years too. It's not just a quick 6-month turnaround. But bet on yourself and keep an open mind with it and realize that you are lucky to be able to do this sport. And even at the age group level, to be able to go to like age group nationals or 70.3, to be able to do this sport and race at a high level, it's really awesome. So enjoy it. We're all lucky to be here.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I second everything that you said. I think it's a great message to all the athletes out there who are either just getting into the sport or do have higher aspirations for the sport. I think that's a really, really good message for them. Additionally, I want to spend one more thing for you.
Yeah.
I know that you've got a bunch of stuff outside of your pro career here as well. You do some coaching yourself.
Yep.
And I think I saw something, oh gosh, what was it? I'm totally spacing on it now, but you had a few other things going on. And if you're interested, I'd love to give you just a moment to talk about some of that.
Yeah.
Whether you want to talk about your coaching or anything else that you've got going on, would love to just give you a moment to talk about that.
Yeah. So last year I made the change. I went to grad school, have an MBA, but I kept on training for a while and I stayed at a local bike shop. Last year I made the change and went to kind of like full-time coaching. So I have my own coaching company, Woodward Endurance. So I coach with that. I also coach a junior elite triathlon team. So we send athletes all over the world, most talented US based kids, great group of kids. So I work with them daily too. So I just had that opportunity last year. So now I'm just full-time coaching between my own stuff and then coaching them in person.
That's
so
awesome.
It's super rewarding. It's fun playing both sides of it and being able to give back. Being able to help 12 to 19-year-olds kind of develop in the sport too, from what I've learned already. I'm still young, but they're just high school kids at the end of the day too. So then just helping them through daily life has been super rewarding.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
awesome
like what my
you're doing
day-to-day
that.
looks like.
That's awesome that you're doing that, and I'll make sure to link those down below. So if you're in the Chicago area, those the junior group that you're working with, is that local for Chicago or is that like
It's like a Midwest team.
Midwest?
So it's Multi-Sport Madness Triathlon Team, MMTT. We have kids all over the country that race for us. But the ones who come to our like daily training sessions are Chicago based. So they'll drive about an hour to our cycling studio. We ride in person, we swim and run in person year round.
Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'll make sure to link that down below. So if y'all are athletes in the Chicago area, definitely make sure to check those out and hit up Tyler here. He's got some good advice for you.
I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up here. So even though I am going to put some bets on myself, I'm going to put some bets on you too. And I'll be looking forward to following your career as a pro athlete. Would love to have you back on later in the year to hear how your your second season goes. But yeah, otherwise, it's been great having you on. Great talking with you, and wish you the very, very best in your future career as a pro athlete.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on.
If you made it this far, make sure to drop a like on the video to let us know that you enjoy this content and want to see more of it. Also, because this is a community that supports each other, go ahead and check out Tyler's journey in the description below. Give him a follow on Instagram. Check out his media. I want to help support him as an athlete and in his future endeavors. So with all that, again, thanks for sticking around and make sure you bet on yourself. We'll see you next time on First Year Pros.